Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me after a week-long, is it a 2-week-long hiatus? 2 week, I guess 2 weeks. We were gone. Well, I was gone because my wife was having a baby, and it's hard to record a show about hockey when it's not your job and you have a baby. So I'll bet there's people out there that do it, but not me. So therefore, Justin, you get sucked into my my lack of doing this.
Well, first off, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just awesome news. I was so excited to see the text, and I mean, I think, you know, our listeners should know when this baby was actually born, because it's a significant date.
That's true. Yes, Valentine's Day was her birthday, so it's pretty. It was pretty cool. You know, it's pretty cool to be born on that day. And was it?
Yeah.
What day was Ryan O'Reilly traded? It wasn't that day, right? That was
17th.
Oh yeah, it was the 17th. Okay, I was.
Yeah.
that'd be something else too. Yeah, Valentine's Day birthday, and shoot, it was definitely the best Valentine's Day I've ever had, for sure.
There you go. I love it. You better say that.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm sure that my 14-year-old self getting some Valentine from I can't even tell you who I got a Valentine from when I was 14. Some person that I'll never remember. So yeah, this I will never forget. I'm sure that I could have Alzheimer's and still be like, yep, Valentine's Day, my kid was born. I might think that it was like yesterday, but but yes, it was a great Valentine's Day, and we're actually sleeping really well, so I can't complain. I mean, not sleeping it is broken up a little bit. You know, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it is definitely nice to be able to sleep for like a straight 7-8 hours. For those of you that sleep a good amount of time. If you sleep for less than that, and you don't have kids, well, then that's your own fault. But I'm sleeping for like 4-hour stretches or so right now, a couple of them. And it works. So, but we have some big hockey stuff to get to. Our last show was on the 8th, and we did not get to talk about Tarasenko being traded to the New York Rangers. So I think we should start there, just because we haven't actually hit on it yet. And then we'll move to Ryan O'Reilly going to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then we'll move on to the different rumors and all the things that are going on. And that could happen, and then that, by the time we actually put the show out, will have happened, and we'll just look like idiots trying to predict what's going to have already happened. So that's definitely happened to us a few times. But yeah, let's talk the Tarasenko trade. What were your initial thoughts, Tarasenko to the New York Rangers?
Yeah, initial thoughts were I did not expect the Rangers to even be in the mix for Tarasenko, right? I mean, for most guys that are on the block, for example, like Patty Kane, right, was the big one that you've been hearing, or Timo Meier, right? There's always been teams where you just kind of like, okay, yeah, they're in the mix, and you hear all these insiders talking about the possibility of them going to this team. But Tarasenko to the Rangers was not even on the radar, I think, for anybody I was reading on. So when I heard this, I mean, I thought this was special, just because don't get me wrong. I think Patty Kane to the Rangers would have been great too. And, for the longest time, he was like pretty much a link hand in hand to the Rangers. Just, hey, we're just going to wait to the deadline, and then just pull the plug. But I like this move, one, because you're not sitting around waiting. You're like, let's just go get a guy. We need a right winger. So let's go get somebody who's got proven playoff success, like Patrick Kane. But I think the Rangers, right, their big hiccup I read was they were concerned about the injury history with Patrick Kane. And, I mean, they're not really getting anybody that much better, in my opinion, when it comes to that.
No, yeah, I know that's silly. I mean, of course, then, as we know, later, 2 nights ago, he goes off and rattles off a hat trick against the Leafs. So right. I don't think anything is wrong with Patrick Kane right now.
No, not at all. But, I mean, overall, though, I love this move. I think Tarasenko is still somebody who has some juice left in the tank, right? I mean, you look at, when your team's losing, when you're not winning like St. Louis was, I mean, they were just basically floating at 500 hockey for so long all season. I mean, when you're a guy who's very competitive and you can tell Tarasenko, just wants to win. And he's a guy too that for a while with St. Louis wanted out. Then, they were winning games, and all of a sudden, winning cures everything. So I'm cool being back in. Now I think he gets to go to a team where they've got this culture now of, Stanley Cup pedigree, where it's Stanley Cup or bust. And they've got good young pieces. They've got good veteran guys. They've got probably one of the best goaltenders in the world. So there's all these pieces around where I think, for a guy like Tarasenko, who just, probably just wanted to get away from St. Louis at this point, I think this works out great it's going to be great for both teams because, one, St. Louis gets their first round pick, which I think they, had to have in this deal. They don't really get a good prospect. I mean, Hunter Skinner is just someone who, might turn out to be a bottom pairing, bottom six kind of guy. Sammy Blais is somebody who, in my opinion, is just, a throwaway bottom line guy. And
and they went out and got Nico Mikkola too in that trade. So they needed some salary going the other way for that to work. So Sammy Blais kind of that guy, and Blais, he just was not really even finding anything on that fourth line in New York. So I think it was more or less like a mercy killing, sending him to St. Louis, who, I mean, St. Louis, they're probably still one of the most interesting teams in the league right now because I mean, they're still linked to Timo Meier. And I mean, that
I read that today. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's not as if this is a team that is just going to go and die. This is a team that's going, you know what? Ryan O'Reilly, maybe just, we'll start with Tarasenko. Tarasenko was going to leave. We knew that. He was going. I think at the beginning of the year, if you had talked to Ryan O'Reilly and you had said, hey, we'll give you the extension you're looking for, he would have happily stayed in St. Louis. And you know what? There is definitely, in my mind, still a chance that he goes back to St. Louis. I think he liked it there. I think that they like him, but they just, I mean, you look at that, you look at the deal that St. Louis got for Ryan O'Reilly. Again, like you said, a first round pick. On top of that, they got a first, second, and a third, and a couple young-ish guys, Adam Gaudette and Mikhail Abramov, guys that they'll be depth pieces in the AHL. Could bring them up and they can play in your bottom pair, your bottom six kind of vibe. But I mean, how could you turn that trade down if you're St. Louis? I mean, you're out of the playoffs. Why wouldn't you? Ryan O'Reilly doesn't have a way to stop you from making that trade. So in my mind, even if you want to sign him, you just say, hey, like, we really like you. Possibly in the future, we'd love to revisit this, but we're going to take what we can get for you right now and go try to win another Stanley Cup. I mean, the Leafs have as good a chance as any other top team to win the Cup this year, so go see what you can do. And I think that it'll breathe new life into him, and it sure sounded like it did. But and same with Tarasenko. I mean, you're looking at someone who you're just playing on a team where things aren't working anymore, right? So it just kind of gets a little bit. You get bogged down, and now they get to go. Both players get a breath of fresh air, and the St. Louis Blues all of a sudden have a ton of draft capital, and they could go and trade for somebody like Timo Meier and just say, I mean, hey, Timo Meier at this stage of the game, he's a better player than Ryan O'Reilly. So let's bring him in, and it kind of shakes up that top six. And Tarasenko was going to be gone anyways, and maybe you bring back Ryan O'Reilly at the end of the year, and you're just plus a Timo Meier. And I think it could all be reworked. You could bring in another, they just need another defenseman who can play back there and maybe kind of shake that up. But it looks like St. Louis may go the shake-up route rather than the let's tear this whole thing down vibe.
Yeah, I mean, there's no point if you're St. Louis on tearing things down because, listen, you still got Braden Shen under contract for a while. You just gave Thomas and Kyrou extensions. And you've got, you still got some good young pieces in there. I mean, listen, if between Pavel Buchnevich, right, you still got him signed, and you've got Brandon Saad, so you've still got some good veteran guys who can still produce. And, maybe bringing a guy like Timo Meier would be just so interesting. I think they would still have a dangerous top six. And if some of these younger guys like Neighbors and,
Perunovic,
can figure it out, I think they've got a really good shot at still being competitive. For me, right, obviously you look at the back end and, Nick Leddy being on your top pairing is no bueno. And Bennington's got to get it together at some point. So, who knows? Maybe they luck out this offseason and can sign a decent backup goaltender for cheap and have somebody who can come in and, give you a few more games than Thomas Greiss does and a little bit better save percentage, and maybe you've got a shot, right? So,
Yep.
And all
the
you got to
West,
do is get in.
I don't know about you, but I look at the West and I go, I didn't expect Winnipeg to be where they are. I didn't expect Seattle to be where they are. I say this Western Conference is wide open. Dallas looked good at the end of the year last year. Did I expect them to win the Central Division? No. I expected Colorado to be right there. And to their credit, Colorado's been rolling, and maybe by the end of this, Colorado is still this top seed in the Central. But the West just appears to be more open than the Eastern Conference. Like the Eastern Conference, there's still some big teams you got to go through. You look at how long Ottawa and Buffalo, Detroit, these teams have been trying to squeeze their way into the playoffs. And usually, you get those teams that are able to kind of move their way through and this one random year they made the playoffs. But man, the Eastern Conference is just so top heavy. It's tough to knock one of those guys out. I know New Jersey is seemingly doing that right now. But New Jersey, we've been waiting for them to do this for 4 years.
Right.
So it's not. This is more like, well, finally New Jersey's competitive. They should have been competitive earlier. Whereas I think with Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa, this was sort of that hey, maybe they'll actually be competitive this year, and they have been. So, the Eastern Conference is certainly more top heavy than the West in my mind. But I think if you're in the Western Conference, and you're St. Louis, you go, we're out of it. St. Louis is not making the playoffs this year. But would I be surprised if St. Louis kind of changes a few things up and next year they come back and they're competitive for a playoff spot? Absolutely not. Especially if they do something with their goaltending. So I think St. Louis is in this interesting retool, kind of flip-flop out a couple guys and see if they can't make this into something else. And that may be that Craig Berube needs to go.
Sure.
That would be my next, is this one of those things where, he was great. They won the Stanley Cup, and he had several good years following that Stanley Cup run. They won playoff rounds, and they were very competitive. But do they have the team that he needs to be able to be a successful coach anymore? I would venture to say no. That what they just traded away in O'Reilly and Tarasenko was the old Blues. They only have 5 players left over, I think, from that Stanley Cup winning team. So now you start to look at it and you go, you got to wonder, you got to see what has Craig Berube been able to do with this group. And that's where I think, maybe that's the next strata to kind of go chop. Is, are they going to fire him this year? I don't think so. But next year, let's say there's another slow start, I think you definitely see Craig Berube on the block.
Yeah, you look at last year their big issue was 5-on-5 play, right? And so you think this season, right, we're going to go correct that. They go and get Nick Leddy, and again the offseason, you just kind of look at that and that's a questionable move. Nick Leddy's not bad, but he's not, a top 4 guy anymore, in my opinion.
He's not bad, but he's not good. Good in the sense that, is he going to really make a huge impact in your top?
He's not turning the needle, right? Yeah. No. But again, their 5-on-5 play this year has been terrible. They are 6th worst in the NHL as far as goals against 5-on-5. And when it comes to goal differential 5-on-5, they're 8th worst in the NHL. They're down there with teams like Chicago, Anaheim, Ottawa, Arizona, Montreal. So that kind of play is not going to get you very far in the NHL. And so, right, maybe a coaching change is where they need to go, because, you can only swap out so much player personnel without saying, we're just going into a full rebuild at this point. And
sure.
So, when you jettison guys like, Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, and maybe you go out and you spend one of those first round draft picks and some prospects, some other capital to bring in Timo Meier. Goaltending again has a big thing to do with this, but at some point you got to just be like, well, the easier thing to do would be to just bring in a new head coach and see if we can't shake things up a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's pretty clear that letting David Perron walk was a really short-sighted decision for the Blues. I mean, David Perron was just so important to their power play, and he was a big part of that team. And now you're kind of seeing. I mean, since then they've basically had to trade away all the rest of their those pieces that were a part of that cup-winning team, and I think that was probably maybe the most like underrated no move by a team was the Blues not re-signing David Perron. He wanted to sign there, and he didn't, and that has really hurt the St. Louis Blues, and you can see it. Their power plays dropped to 17th in the league, 21.5%, and that is, I mean, when you play the way that you play 5-on-5, you have to be a lot better in your special teams, like the Blues were last year, where they were 24.8%.
Right,
and that's just you're talking about a lot more goals in the course of a regular season on like a 4% more. I mean, that's 4 goals for every 100 power plays. So, maybe those 8 to 10 extra goals in a year, I mean, that can be the difference of 8 to 10 wins sometimes. So,
right. And guess what? The Red Wings power play went from 26th to 15th in the league, up 5% this year.
Yep.
What are the odds of that?
And that is, I think, exactly what Steve Yzerman was expecting, that David Perron, who really is a power play specialist, coming in and really changing that group and the way they do things and their mindset, their approach, because he certainly always had in his career this kind of like I'm not going to shoot that puck. That's dumb. Always seemed to be a more cerebral player where, you're not going to go right to the Michael Scott Wayne Gretzky quote, where you miss 100% of the shots you don't shoot. Well, yes, that's true, but you also don't score when you shoot it right into the goalie's chest. No goalies has ribs separated that large where it's going through them. So I think you need somebody like that, especially on a young team in Detroit, where you want to have somebody who can calm down that power play and say, no, we're gonna pass it off. Even that seems like it would be. It seems like if you can make a sweet shot, it'll be a sweet goal. No, pass it off and look for that play that has the high percentage. And I mean that is just David Perron all the way, and I think that's why Detroit's power play is so good, and frankly, why St. Louis has dropped off a little bit. And I think St. Louis is going to drop off even more because no Tarasenko, you're losing that one player that a lot of teams are going to kind of shift towards when they're on the power play. Yeah,
and Ryan O'Reilly too. I mean, there's another guy
sure.
who's leading the second unit there, so when you don't have that good second unit, it's just
yeah, and at very least he's going to piss you off in front of the net, right?
Right.
And that's exactly Toronto stuck him on their power play in that first game against Montreal, and he was doing just that, just standing in front of the net, just kind of making life miserable for Jake Allen in there. So I think let's actually get to that trade, since we haven't really broken it down to its smaller pieces. I mean, I know there's lots of money going everywhere. Minnesota was the third team involved. They get a 4th round pick from Toronto to take $1.875 million. St. Louis eats the other half of Ryan O'Reilly's deal, and they get Gaudette, Abramov, and then a first, second, and a third. The first and the third in 2023, and the 2024 pick is the 2nd round pick. So, and the Leafs also get Noel Acciari, which I think was a really underrated toss in there for the Leafs, because the Leafs bottom 6 has not been a huge threat to score, and I think that Noel Acciari is for a bottom 6 guy, he's somebody that you can't just completely write off. I mean, he has 10 goals so far this year. He already has 1 for the Leafs. And I think that that's something that the Leafs have lacked. I think I've said it here on the show that earlier in the year, just looking at them, you're like, yeah, I mean, you guys, there's the ability to go and make a play, but nobody can shoot. Nobody's really a threat to score. It was more or less, well, just keep them pinned down in their own zone and just kind of cycle it around. and then let our big guns come out and score. And I think that that's fine in the regular season for a while, but you really need a bottom six that can score in the playoffs. And Noel Acciari has been in the playoffs. I mean, he's gone on some long runs with the Boston Bruins, and he didn't do anything for Florida last year in the play, or the last 3 years in the playoffs. He has 0 points. So hopefully he can figure it out in the playoffs. But so far in the regular season this year, you're seeing someone who is putting the puck in the net, and that's what the Leafs need from that bottom six.
Yeah, right. I mean, they got a guy with experience, right? You talked about those 2 deep runs from, Boston, who oddly enough, Boston lost to St. Louis, where Noel Acciari ended up going, and a couple years later. And so, I think once you get, come playoff time, he's sandpaper. He's a guy who has speed. He can grind it out, and he'll chip in every once in a while. And, look, we saw, Wayne Simmons get put on waivers. And to be quite honest with you, if you had to choose between Noel Acciari and Wayne Simmons, I'm going to take Acciari
all day. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's an easy decision. And if anything, granted, your bottom six is better than it was yesterday before you made this trade. And so, again, regardless how much, you think Noel Acciari is going to move the needle on that bottom six, the point is it's better than it was with Wayne Simmons or, anybody else, prior to this deal. So, I think it's a good ad. It's a good depth piece. And so if anything, I wouldn't be surprised really, when you talk about that bottom six, if Toronto still isn't done. I mean, they've still got a little bit of cap space. They've got about $4 million they can play with. So honestly, if this is a year where, again, they're willing to go all in, granted, you look over the next, this season and the next 2 after this, they've only got 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. But, if you want to get those bottom 6 guys, maybe you deal a prospect. You've still got your 5th, 6th rounders, a 7th round pick. You can make some smart moves, bring in some low key guys who can, just quietly chip in and really complement your bottom 6 well. And, who knows, maybe at some point, right, they move Ryan O'Reilly down to that 3rd line and take him off that line with Tavares and Marner. And, who knows, maybe he rejuvenates some other guys down there too, like, Carly Young, Crocker, David Kampf. Who knows? Maybe he stirs up a little something down there for those guys.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to be playing with Marner and Tavares, which is a pretty fun line. With Calle Yarncroke, he's probably having his best season of his entire career. So I don't think that he's got 27 points in 50 games. The most points he's ever had is 35. In 68 with the Predators. So it looks like Calle Yarncroke should, by all estimations, he should exceed his career high for probably goals and assists. His career high for goals is 16. He's got 12 right now. So Calle Yarncroke definitely, he's been the one bright spot of that bottom 6. Now I know he did a lot of his damage he did as he moved up in the lineup, and he may not have that anymore. But then you look at, do you want to have Marner, Tavares, and O'Reilly together all the time? Probably not. You'd probably prefer to have O'Reilly playing down in the lineup with someone like Yarncroke or David Kampf is likely going to play that 4th line center now because O'Reilly's going to be taking the center, most of those 3rd line center stuff. But you've got Per Engvall in there, and Alex Kerfoot he's really been the one guy who has not been as great this year. 26 points in 57 games. He's still on pace for a 35-point season, but after last year putting up 51 points, I think that the expectations for him are really high, and you hope to see more production from the bottom. It'll just depend because it's all about the playoffs at this point. We know like the Leafs are making the playoffs. That's not an issue. It's going to be all about the playoffs and how you match up. And sure looks like the Leafs are playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's going to be hard.
Looks like it.
Hard to find a world in which that doesn't happen. So I got to imagine that was why they said we have to go out and get Ryan O'Reilly. They obviously they saw something in last year's playoff race where they said we need to have someone like O'Reilly in here and not going out and getting a Patrick Kane or any of the other, like a Timo Meier, who the Leafs were rumored to be one of the teams stirring around there too. I think there's something specific that they wanted in Ryan O'Reilly, and we'll see if it pays off. We'll see if he can. He was good in the he was buzzing around doing his thing, but we'll see if he has the foot speed to really keep up with Marner, which I think is that's always been kind of the like, well, if you can't keep up with Marner, it's going to be tough. Like, he's just so fast and is going to make fast decisions. Does Ryan O'Reilly have that ability in him? Or is it better for him to go down, play on that third line, be more of a defensive specialist, and kind of drive, like, something different where, maybe Kerfoot, Engvall, they're not really like energy guys in the sense that they're not going to go blow anyone up, but Ryan O'Reilly certainly could, and maybe that's where you kind of get your infusion of life into the bottom six. But at the same time, is it not hard to justify, like, to say, well, you gave up a first, second, and a third for a guy. Are you really going to play him in your bottom six? Like, you couldn't have gone and gotten a different bottom six player if you were going to play him down there?
No, the thing I like for this, though, is he gives you that option to put him on the bottom six, right? I mean, we talked about Tampa, right? That's the team that, the Maple Leafs are going to have to face in the first round, regardless how the season plays out, it's happening. And the one thing that's always made Tampa successful in the playoffs has been their ability to have a great third line so they can have an amazing top nine to roll out. And so, again, we don't know if Tampa Bay is going to hold pat with what they've got or if they're going to pull out some trickery like they always do.
Not a chance. Right? Timo Meier will go to Tampa somehow.
They're going to make, what's the limit on the amount of teams that can eat half a salary you can trade him to, right? So he's going to get dealt 5 times.
Yeah, they have no first or a second this next draft and no first the following draft.
So, I mean, who knows? I honestly don't think they're going to make a big splash, but they might bring in somebody who can come in and play on that bottom six. That wouldn't surprise me, right? They move out a guy, who's making, 1.5 or whatever. Like, maybe they shift out Nemestikov, right? Send him out his 2.5 and they create a little space, bring in another bottom six guy. But, again, with Ryan O'Reilly, right, you can put him in your top six, which is where I think he probably belongs for most of the season, because I want to see him get his foot speed back. I want to see him really produce offensively. But at the same time, when you face up against a team like Tampa Bay that's got an amazing top nine, right? So if you got to go Nick Paul on that third line there, who's, again, he's like Ryan O'Reilly to me. He's a poor man's Ryan O'Reilly. He's not as fast, but he can chip in offensively, and he's got a good hockey IQ at both ends of the ice. So Ryan O'Reilly to me is some guy you can put out there at times against that third line and feel secure about this this third line for the Maple Leafs matching up against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's one of those, it's almost like when the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox are like, we're going to play each other. We're like, we got to find this guy matches up great with the Yankees. Let's go get him. Or like, this guy is great against this pitcher. We're going to go get him. I mean, that's what you got to do at this point. It reminds me of when the Leafs were playing Ottawa every year, and you saw how the Leafs always just went, well, we need to be good in the playoffs. We're just going to build ourselves for the playoffs. They stopped worrying about the regular season, and they'd finish like 7th in the regular season and then just be a very good playoff team. Not quite the Stanley Cup winning team, because God knows no one could beat New Jersey back then. But whereas Ottawa was always that high-flying team in the regular season, and they were fantastic, and then the playoffs would come and you could bog it down. But I don't know if it's that way, the same way anymore. Like, you can't just, yes, it is a different season. Yes, guys play harder. The rules, however, don't change the way that they used to in the playoffs. Like, you still can't, you're not all of a sudden getting away with everything because it's the playoffs. I just think that guys are more willing to block shots, and the intensity goes up. So it does change this. It changes the game, but I think that it's a little different now, where you can't just like, well, let's go into the playoffs. We're going to bog everything down, and we're going to just hold your stick the entire time so you can't get anywhere, kind of thing. I just remember, this will date me, Shane Corson shadowing Alexei Yashin, and it was so funny. It was like a basketball player on another, like just foot for foot. He would just follow him around in his face, just kind of getting in his way like you would playing basketball, trying to cover someone one-on-one or in football, covering someone one-on-one. And I've never really seen anything like it since then. It was a very interesting defensive strategy, but they shut him down. I think they swept them in that series. So it worked, but never mind. I digress. I don't need to 22 years ago hockey, but I think now both these teams are going to do everything they can to match up against each other, because really, if you think, you go, I mean, whoever gets out of that first round, yeah, you're going to play Boston, right? Like, it's not as if it's oh, sweet, we got past each other and now we're good. No, you're going to have to go play Boston now. I really think that both Tampa and Toronto match up pretty well with Boston. So I got to think you're looking at it going, if we can get past this first round, we've got a chance at the cup. So why wouldn't we build our team to kind of be competitive against the other team and maybe find an edge? And obviously Dubas and the Leafs see something in Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari to a lesser extent that are going to help them do what they haven't been able to do, and that's get out of the first round. What was that?
The guy's got a Conn Smythe. I mean, he knows what it takes to win.
Yes, and Tampa Bay has
plenty of that too.
a couple of those guys, but yeah. Well, okay. Should we? Here, I want to get your thoughts here on just who do you think wins that trade? Is it St.
the
Louis
Ryan O'Reilly trade
or the Leafs? Yes.
Well, I mean, in the short term, I think it's the Maple Leafs that win this trade. I know, a lot of people are going to come out and say they overpaid, but honestly, until you see the fruit of your, those picks, basically, till you see what they develop into, it's very easy to point at Ryan O'Reilly and say that the Maple Leafs won this trade, right? And so if Ryan O'Reilly can give them solid production in the playoffs and, elevate their game a little bit more. Now, whether or not Toronto gets out of the first round, I think is a moot point. I think for, Ryan O'Reilly, if he's producing, if he's doing everything you wanted him to do, then you've clearly won that trade. And obviously, I think, if Toronto can't get out of the first round at this point, it would be because guys like Matthews or Tavares just aren't really producing either, right? They're not doing their job. So
it's not because of Ryan O'Reilly, most likely.
Right. Yeah. So as long as they can show up and the Maple Leafs can get some decent goaltending.
I mean, let's be honest here. I wouldn't go as far to say that any of the years that the Leafs lost in the first round, outside of maybe the 17-18 year, I think, where they lost to Boston, where Matthews only had 2 points. I mean, Matthews had 4 goals and 5 assists in 7 games last year. He did everything he had 9 points. What do you want from the guy?
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. So he's showing up. And, if you can get close to that kind of production out of these guys again, I think Toronto's got a really good shot at getting past the first round. So, to me, from a Toronto Maple Leafs perspective, that's a win for this trade, right? So if Ryan O'Reilly shows up and gives you a little bit of production and really does everything right at both ends of the ice, it's a win for Toronto. So, but long term, we'll see, right? St. Louis might end up finding a gem. Say Toronto misses out on the first round and they end up, this ends up being like a number 18, 19 overall pick. And, St. Louis can, find a hidden gem, that late, because this is going to be a deep draft this year. So maybe they find somebody that turns out to be a really quality top 6 guy. Then we might be singing a different tune at this point. But
yeah, I think the highest this pick would probably be, let's say if the Leafs finish where they are right now. I don't right now they're 4th in the NHL. Even if they were to lose in the first round, it's likely that pick would still be somewhere in the 22, 23 kind of range. So, I mean, you're still getting a pick in the at best, I guess, the low 20s. But yeah, I mean, if you're Toronto, I don't think you care. You have to make some kind of move. You were going to move your first round pick. You knew they were going to. How are you going to go hold on to that first round pick right now?
I don't think you can sit still if you're Toronto, right? You have to do something, especially with all this cap space created by Jake Muzzin's LTIR,
right.
Salary going off the books. So,
and I don't know if you saw, it was, I think right around the time that we did our last show. So I think we missed it. Dubas did come out, and I believe it was Dubas, and he said that, we're going to find out more in about 2 weeks with Muzzin. So it's probably this week that they're going to find out more. But he did say that essentially he'd be shocked if Muzzin ever plays again.
Okay.
So Jake Muzzin, for all intents and purposes, he's around the team because he can be, but he is likely he's not going to retire for 4 years because he's going to do the Leafs a solid and stay on LTIR, or sorry, 2 years. He's got 2 years left on his deal, so
I'm sure he wants to collect that check too.
He'll get that check. Yep, the 5.625. So I think you're looking at it like Jake Muzzin's gone, and that is a cap hit that'll open up some things. The other thing you got to remember too with the Leafs, they are going to get Nicholas Robertson back, who looked really good. He was just kind of starting to find his footings there with the Leafs, and I think you add him into the mix. I mean, this forward group is there's a lot of bodies in here. When you add Achari and Ryan O'Reilly and don't trade anyone off your roster, I mean, you're talking about like Joey Anderson and Aston Reese, and I mean those guys are going to kind of be circling in and out of the lineup, I think, because of Achari coming in and taking one of those spots in the bottom six. And it's great for the playoffs. It gives you depth. I mean, you're never going to complain having Zach Aston Reese come off your, if he has to kind of ride the pine for a little while and sit up in the press box and then comes out of there and is able to play in the playoffs. I mean, you're not mad about having someone like that as a depth player. But the Leafs have some, decent guys coming too off of injury.
Yeah.
So,
and if Nick Robertson comes back, you have him on the third line with Ryan O'Reilly and Yarn Krok. I think that's a great third line to have.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe that's the key for Toronto this year, right? They finally have a solid third line that's going to compete and really contribute, like we've seen in Tampa Bay for so many years.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to get. We want to talk some of the potential trades out there. I think probably the biggest one is either Timo Meier or Patrick Kane, where Patrick Kane we kind of thought was like, well, is he really going to go? We're not sure now. I think that after that hat trick against the Leafs and 5 goals in 2 games, I think he's pissed off, and I think he's showing everybody that he's still got it. He's going to be a valuable asset to whatever team goes out and scoops him up. Now that the Rangers are likely not going to be that team, the Leafs are not going to be that team, who are you looking at? Because I think Timo Meier, lots of links to New Jersey. The Islanders already went out and got Horvat, so I don't think that they're a destination anymore. I'm really curious as to where a Patrick Kane could end up.
Yeah, I've got 2 teams in mind, and they're pretty much teams I think that a lot of other people have been talking about. But one is the Dallas Stars. I think they're a team that could really benefit from a middle 6 winger to come in. Obviously, Patty Kane would probably slot in on that second line. Between
you're not
Sagan
splitting up that top line, but yeah.
No, not a chance in hell. I mean, they'll ride that top line out like Boston did with Pasta and Marchand and Bergeron for so long. But to me, I think this is a guy who could come in and play with Tyler Sagan and maybe. Gosh, I don't know. You put maybe Dellandrea on the other wing. Who knows? But I think there's options there in Dallas. I think they've got a little bit of space to work with. They've got $2.5 million in deadline space, and maybe you move somebody out. Not really sure who goes and who stays, but
yeah, you can make it work.
Yeah, that's their problem to figure out, right? Maybe somehow they get rid of Mason Marchment at this point, who has a no move clause, but.
He's such an interesting. He was. I mean, he's doing fine. I think he's doing kind of what, probably more so where he actually will generally slot. He's got 24 points in 57 games. He's probably at his best a 40-point guy. And and
maybe Patty Kane brings the best out of him. Right?
Sure. And I mean, he was playing in a little bit like a lot different of a system in Florida, where offense was definitely they had much more of a trigger finger than Dallas does. So there is that, and also, I mean, it's the first year in a certain system. I mean, next year he could be a 55 point guy, no problem.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It could work out. So to me, Dallas is a big team that I think could use a guy like that, because them sitting at the top of the division right now, I think they're poised to make a big splash in the deadline and really say, hey, you know what, we're a legit team, we're a legit contender, and as long as Joe Pa is beating out Father Time here, he's the next Tom Brady, in my opinion.
Right.
Who knows? They could make a deep run.
Minus the championships. So.
Right, obviously.
But yes, Dallas does not have a first or a third in this year's draft. So they are, there's no 2023 first round pick to deal there. That could be, to their detriment if another team, is willing to give up that 2023 pick.
But you got to think, though, Patty Kane gets to pretty much choose where he wants to go at this point. And, I think if you're Chicago, right, if Patty Kane comes out and says, hey, you know what, it's this team or this team, and maybe Dallas is one of those, and, you try to look for the best deal that you can get. And, if it is only Dallas, maybe he says, I'm only going to Dallas at this point. Maybe you got to settle for a 2025 first rounder or something instead. So, and if you're Chicago rebuilding, I mean, you take what you can get at this point.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, when's the last time the Dallas Stars made a big trade at the deadline?
That's a good question.
You have to kind of go back to 2019, which I believe is 2019 the year that they went to the finals.
Stanley Cup Finals.
It was the bubble, right? That first bubble year. So yeah, that year they got James, and they actually did all this before COVID hit in 2019. Oh no, this is 2019. I'm sorry. So this is before the bubble. Yeah. So in 2019 they traded for Jamie Alexiak, Ben Lovejoy, and Matt Zuccarello just before the deadline. So those were their three, and they also got Andrew Cogliano at the deadline. So that was the last time that I can really see, they're making some big moves at the deadline. They didn't really do much last year at the deadline. They got Scott Wedgwood, they got Nemesnikov last year from the Red Wings. Not really anything that made much of a difference, nor was it anything that we thought would make much of a difference. So, you have to look back to 2019 for the last time the Stars kind of went, all right, let's give up some assets. I mean, and in that year they gave up a fourth, a third, Connor Carrick, and then a second and a third round pick for the second and the third round pick for Matt Zuccarello. That's a pretty good deal. And Matt Zuccarello, if I remember right, did he play pretty well for them that year? In 2019 for the Stars. Oh, he got hurt. That's right. He only played 2 games in the regular season.
11
but he had 3
points in the playoffs.
11 points in 13 games. Yeah, that was a solid little deal for a second and a third round pick. But anyways, that was just across my mind, thinking, the Dallas Stars are so good. They've been a very good team over the last 5 years. They've been always competitive, give or take a year or so. But you look at them now and you go, man, how is this team not in the mix for one of these big name players? Like the Stars legitimately could win the Stanley Cup. And so
they've got the goaltending, they've got the top line to do it, and
they've got the horses on defense. I mean, this team is built to win the Stanley Cup, and you'd think that it would be worth dealing a first round pick. I mean, they traded a first round pick for Nils Lundqvist with the Rangers. That was that deal for Rangers prospect there, and he's been fine, but as a defenseman for them. But you got to think, the Stars have just been always missing that little bit of depth scoring. So where is it coming from this year? And that's
and in my opinion too, right? You've got Jake Ottinger at $4 million for this year and 2 more seasons, and you've got Joe Pa re-signed for another season at 3.5. Like, if there's a time to make a move, it's this season or next. So let's go.
Yeah, I mean, because next year Rupe Hintz goes to 8.45. So that's definitely a big increase. You're going to have to. You got Gurianov as an RFA. There's some guys you're going to have to re-sign, but they're in a very good cap position. But certainly, And certainly Joe Pa helps that a lot. When you have a guy who's like, I've got enough money, I'll sign for significantly less as basically a point per game player. So, but yeah, I hope the Stars do something. I hope that they make a run in that Western Conference. I mean, the heck of it would be if, you find yourself in a situation where, which it doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore, but it was for a little while we were like, is Colorado going to be that bottom wild card, and the top team's going to have to play Colorado in the first round? But now it looks like, it's going to be, it may be a three-headed race for the top of that Central now, with Colorado really booming, and Winnipeg and Dallas have kind of slowed down a little bit here. So we'll see what happens. And Landeskog, I believe, has started to skate, so that's a huge boost for the Avalanche. They're only going to, the Avalanche are going to still be the favorites for the Stanley Cup, because they've been injured all year, and they've somehow still managed to navigate a very good division.
Right. And you think, too, if you're Dallas, right, Colorado doesn't have that threat at that second-line center position like they did with Kadri. So if you're looking at a year where you're like, man, you know what, this team is beatable, we could do this, right? I mean, Winnipeg, to me, is...
Till they go and get Timo Meier.
Well, yeah, we'll see about that. But look, you've got Seattle at the other end, right? So Seattle, Los Angeles, right? These are teams that, to me, are competitive, but maybe not scary. Wild card spot, you've got Minnesota, Edmonton, Calgary battling it out for a couple spots there. And again, those teams aren't super scary for me either. I mean, yes, Edmonton getting in would be, could be scary, but
yeah, again, you're right. So with Seattle and LA, you look at both those teams and you go, yeah, like I get it's cute that you guys are scoring a lot of goals right now, but come playoff time, this is going to dry up.
Right, and if you're Dallas, you've got almost the easiest path probably you could have had in the last couple of years to where why not take advantage of this, right? Because I think next year, Edmonton's either got to get their shit together or there's going to be something going on there. I would imagine Connor McDavid's just going to, I don't know how long he's going to stand for that. And Calgary, I have to imagine, is going to figure their shit out.
There's a pretty good chance here that Calgary and Dallas play each other again in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember last year we were like, there's no way Dallas beats Calgary, which they didn't. But I think this year it'd be flip-flopped. There's no way Calgary's going to beat Dallas. Their young players have improved tremendously from last season. I mean, they went from having really good, nice young players to having absolute superstars who we don't care how old they are. We just care the fact that they are, suddenly they've got a few guys who are in the top 20 of the NHL in terms of talent, and they're just ripping it up, playing all together. So that's a huge advantage. So yeah, the Stars, on top of all this, the fact that Jake Ottinger is having the season that he's having, and I know he hasn't played quite as well as of late, but he's clearly capable of having a great playoff series. He can steal an entire series. He almost did it against Calgary last year. Right. So,
yeah, we know what he can do.
Yes. I want to hear your thoughts on Timo Meier. Where do you think he's going?
Well, really quick, I didn't fully answer your question when you asked for two teams. I only gave you one. So we'll skip over this. Yeah, we'll skip past this second team pretty quick. But my second team is the Vegas Golden Knights. With Mark Stone going on LTIR. Yeah, I think there's...
Yeah, they could just take his contract. They don't even need Chicago to eat half of it.
Right, they could.
Or
eat the whole thing.
Yeah. Chicago's, I'm sure, planning on eating half that. And, but they don't need a third team. And that is a huge advantage. I mean, that's just... If you don't need that third team, you don't need to talk to anybody else, and that's got to be an advantage. And Vegas does have a 2023 first-round pick, so something that a lot of these other top teams don't have right now, and that could be maybe the cincher for them.
Right, and the fact that maybe, again, a couple American-born guys, if you're Patty Kane, you can say, I get to go play with Jack Eichel, right? Because that's who needs a winger more than anybody else, I think. And,
yeah. Well, and that was when you brought up the Dallas Stars, I thought of that same thing too. Was you get to go play with Joe Pa, who is just Mr. USA in a lot of ways, and they've played together on that Team USA team. Jason Robertson is a Team USA guy. I mean, you've got a lot of. Is Mason Marchment? No, he's Ontario guy. So, but you look at those connections and you go, all right, like who knows each other? I mean, that is definitely a thing. So I think there's something to be said there. Those two teams are good picks. And by the way, Jake Ottinger is a Minnesota kid, so there's
nice.
Your goalie's the American as well. So okay, to Timo Meier. I know New Jersey's kind of been that team who's been talked about maybe the most. In some respects, I find it odd because I do think that New Jersey's center position is pretty strong. And whereas I think that they could probably use a Patrick Kane more than Timo Meier, but Timo Meier is in a different position. I mean, he's an RFA at the end of the year. They can have him for longer than just 3 months. What are your thoughts on Timo Meier and the New Jersey Devils, or someone else?
Yeah, so I mean, really, Timo Meier in New Jersey seems like the perfect fit, just because, one, I think any team trying to acquire him, if they bring him in as a rental, that's great. But I think, honestly, San Jose is going to be trying to maximize their capital or their return on investment and try to find somebody who can sign him long term, right? Whether it's a sign and trade or whether it's just a straight up deal, and then they, the trading team can figure it out later. Because New Jersey is a team that, when you look, I mean, really, their forward group right now, they don't have anybody outside of Palat, Hischier, and Hughes signed beyond this season. Mercer as well, but. For the forward groups, that's it. And so, you've got roughly $37 million in cap space for next season. And yes, Jesper Bratt, you've got to sign him to a big deal. And really, outside of that, no one else needs a lot of money. So you can afford to give Timo Meier, the big contract I'm sure he's probably expecting, whether it's $7-8 million bucks on a 7-8 million or 7-8 year deal. So, to me, I think New Jersey makes perfect sense from that standpoint. And plus, getting another winger, somebody to play on the wing with Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier, I think, again, there's that Swiss connection with Hischier and Meier. I think there's something to be said for that, right? For, the longest time we talked about Russians in Miami with Bobrovsky and Barkov. And so, to me, this is, another, Swiss connection that could make a lot of sense and help help Timo Meier feel a little bit more welcomed into the franchise.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it does, hey, it makes all the sense in the world from a you want to win standpoint. Go out and get the best player available at the deadline, who is probably Timo Meier, and somebody who lets you not just keep him this year, but next. And New Jersey has certainly a lot of capital to trade. They haven't been in this position. They've got all their picks other than a 3rd round pick that they traded away last year when they got John Marino with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, I mean, they have everything that they could need to be able to acquire, frankly, any player that they want if they're willing to give up the assets, because they have the assets. So it'll be interesting to see, because the Devils are absolutely in a position to win here. I mean, Devils, Rangers, I mean, I think probably most people are picking the Rangers, but I don't think there's a world in which the Devils couldn't win. I mean, their offense has been very good, and the Rangers' offense has been much better as of the last 20 games. But last year in the playoffs, we saw them slow down at times. So I think there is a chance the Devils' speed could overtake the Rangers there. Boy, what a series that one is shaping up to be. It sure looks like that's going to be what we end up seeing, a New Jersey, New York final first round, which is very exciting. I'm excited for that one. And if New Jersey happens to, jump Carolina or something, then whatever, we get maybe New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, or New York Islanders, New York Rangers. There's lots of possibilities. So that Metro division is going to have some very big rivalry matchup. Probably 2 New York teams playing each other in the first round, which is an exciting prospect.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. And you know what? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's, it almost seems like, hey, it's going to be the Devils, it's going to be the Rangers there. But, I'm with you. I keep an eye, because I think it's more than possible Carolina could falter at some point, and Rangers and New Jersey could leapfrog either one of them. I mean, heck, they've all been playing really great in their last 10, so it's totally possible that all you need is one team slipping up just a little bit, and the tides turn a little bit. So, but if we do get a Jersey Rangers playoff series, I mean, you just have to watch that young forward group for the Devils, who play so fast, versus that young defense for the Rangers, who in my mind, outside of Adam Fox, the rest of the defense might be a little suspect. So, because all it takes is Jacob Trouba doing something stupid, another stupid hit, and then he's suspended. And then next thing you know, you're relying on, Keandre Miller and Brendan, Schneider to carry the load on that back end outside of Fox. And that's just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Any team that you think is going to, I'll shift gears here a little bit, go into defense, because we haven't talked any defenseman being traded. And I think the biggest one out there is Matt Dumba. It's almost a certainty that he's going to go. Any team that you look at and go, yep, that's Dumba's spot?
Oh, I don't know if there's any one particular team. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that could use some quality defensemen.
I feel like every team could use a Matt Dumba. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, I think Boston was going to be a front runner for another defenseman. And I think right now, rumor is that Gurianov from Columbus is already got a deal in place to go to Boston. They're just waiting for Boston to shift some cap stuff around to fit his contract in. So another team could potentially swoop in and take him. But for right now, it looks like he's going to be headed to Boston. So that would have been probably my first team I would have looked at for any, top defender at the deadline right now. But outside of that, I wouldn't be shocked to see the LA Kings make a splash here. I know they've been rumored to be in on Chychrun for so long, but I think, again, Arizona not having to deal him, this season, I think they could stand pat on their asking price and then say, LA maybe gets frustrated. They're like, you know what, screw it. We're not giving you the 10 pieces you're asking for Jacob Chychrun. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go look at Minnesota, who's, slowly slipping out of a playoff spot here and, hanging on to a wild card spot. And, we're going to go ahead and deal a guy like Lizotte or, who knows, one of our younger guys here. We're going to go get Matt Dumba. We're going to, deal maybe send out, Sean Walker or somebody else with him and, bring in Matt Dumba, who can solidify that third pair very, very nicely.
Yeah, LA is in an interesting spot once again because you look at them and you go, are you really going to go out and win a playoff series right now? I don't think so with that goaltending and your defense. Now, does Matt Dumba help? Yes. Man, I don't know if I'm trading my first round pick for Matt Dumba when the first round looks pretty simple. Do I see LA beating Vegas? No. Do I to me, unless you're getting a guy like this is why Chychrun makes so much sense because he's got lots of term and he's a younger guy. I don't know that it makes sense for Matt Dumba to go to LA because I don't think that LA is there. I don't think that they're going to win the cup. I don't think that they can, especially with that goaltending. I know Phoenix Copley has come in very nicely. He's played really well. He had 913 save percent or a 904 save percentage, which is just below league. I think it's just above league average this year. What's league average save percentage? It's low.
Might be sure just 904 something 90, like that.
Yeah, 905 something. But I mean, they're just not getting the goaltending, and I don't think this is the year that you bet on this team when there's so many other teams surging. Vegas is in this spot where they're going to go out and they're going to get someone. The Avalanche are still fantastic. Dallas and Winnipeg. Like you look up and down, and then you go, well, yeah, we might even what happens if we have to play like Edmonton or something?
Right. There's another team who, again, been rumored to be in on Erik Karlsson, who could really use, I think, a mobile defenseman on the back end. Right. So at $6 million, a cheaper option, if you can get Minnesota to eat half that, easily you can fit in. You can find a way to fit in $3 million somehow. Just deal somebody out. Maybe it's Jesse Puljujarvi, right? Maybe he goes back the other way, and boom, there's your $3 million.
Yeah. And
Dumba's in, no problem.
That makes more sense for both teams because Minnesota, they don't have the same kind of scoring depth up front, the forward depth, and if they're going to lose Dumba, at least you get somebody who's still under contract and is going to play for you, and the Oilers obviously desperate for a defenseman at this point. And,
right.
Yeah, Matt Dumba would fit in nicely. So I like that prospect. I don't know if for the Kings it's worth it at this point. I don't know, even for Seattle, is it worth, other than, those types of teams, they go out and you grab some of the depth guys and you go, hey, we know we've had a couple holes over here. We'll patchwork this together. But I'm looking at them and going, they're still a few years away from being really good. Let them go, see if they could beat Seattle in the first round and maybe go on a little run, but I just don't see it with this goaltending. I think they're going to get ripped up in the playoffs, because if you let in 2 bad goals in the playoffs, you're probably going to lose a series. Like, how often do you see a team where you go, wow, they let in 3 really terrible goals at terrible times, but somehow still won the series? No, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Los Angeles isn't going to go far in the playoffs, but so if they play Seattle first round, I think that they got a really good shot at getting past that, and maybe that's how you reward your younger players. But for me right now, I think LA's at a point where I agree with you. I think spending a first round pick is not the right move at this point. At the their shift towards the next generation of players from Brown and Kopitar. But if you're Seattle, again, just get in, let these younger guys get some experience, let Matty Beniers get a little playoff experience. But man, if you're Edmonton and you get in that first round, you get to play Los Angeles, that's a gold mine for you. I think Edmonton could eat up LA really quick. Especially if they have to get into a goal scoring match. Jack Campbell's been playing a little bit better as of late. So, maybe he turns it on and Edmonton makes a move for a defender, and now all of a sudden LA can't score goals.
Yeah, are we just going to see the same playoff matchups as last year? Edmonton, LA, what was the other? Dallas, Calgary. Oh, we'll see. Anybody else that you're like, this guy's moving? Anyone else that you're thinking of?
Oh, that's moving. Obviously you can look at Chicago, right? And, we talked about Patrick Kane, but I think a guy like Max Domi, Andre Athanasiou, I think those guys are probably going to get dealt at some point. Just a matter of when. And then outside of that, really, I think the only other player that's maybe I would look at, he's been injured for most of the season, would be Shane Gostisbehere. He's another defender that I would keep an eye on. And then, boy, really, outside of that, I don't know if there's any other big name guys. That,
I'll tell you a team that no one is talking about, because people know they're not going to go into some rebuild. But man, the Washington Capitals are tanking fast. They are right now 2 points out of the playoffs. Yes, they have 2 games in hand. Where is Alex Ovechkin? He's not here yet. I mean, we know what's going on. It's family first, all that. No problem with him leaving. Even if he was playing in these games, maybe they only lose 3 instead of all 4. But I don't think that this is just because of Alex Ovechkin not being there. I think that this team does not need to just tear the whole thing down. But when you look at, hey, they've got some pieces that they could move right now. I mean, somewhere between Lars Eller, Marcus Johansson, their entire defensive core are free agents at the end of the year, except for John Carlson. You've got to think that you could move some of those pieces out, acquire some picks, and either make those picks, go out, restock the cupboards, or use those picks in the offseason when you're a little more flexible and you can kind of retool this thing. Like, this is a team to me that is the poster child for, please just make like 1 or 2 changes and you guys will be really good again. You just have to figure out, really, it's their defense. Like, you just kind of have to rebuild your defense and let the forwards just kind of marinate here for a minute and, deal guys off, get some picks, and then be able to bring in the right guy for next year, and just say, this isn't our year. Is Washington going to win the Stanley Cup this year? Absolutely not. Are they even going to make the playoffs? Probably not. I think it's something like they have a 30% chance of making the playoffs, according to what Clear Stats or whatever it is that I heard.
Yeah.
So
you've got Detroit and Buffalo right on your tail, and they've got games at hand. So
a lot of games in hand. Yeah, Buffalo is 2 points back with 4 games in hand. So
right.
Yeah, and they're just trending downward. And it's like, you don't need to hang on. Like, it's obvious that this year is just it's a down year for your club. You had all these injuries at the start of the year. Ovechkin's missing this time right now. It's just a weird time. Just let everybody just kind of chill, trade off a few pieces, get some assets back that you have obviously dealt over the years, and your cupboards are not quite as full, but they do have a first and a second round pick in this next year's draft. If they could tack on a couple more picks in the next two drafts, I mean, you're not just setting yourself up for now, but you could set yourself up for later or trade those picks down the road. And I think they are the absolute candidate for doing that. I mean, who would not love? I know that he's been hurt much of the year, but if Connor Brown is ready to come back, maybe by the end, for the I guess he's out 6 to 8 months. Oh, I forgot about that ACL injury.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was at the beginning of the season. 6 months. I mean, it's not out of the question that you come back in April and maybe play. But I mean, Carl Hagelin,
Connor Sheary. I mean,
Connor Sheary. Yeah,
that guy's been just killing it. And at $1.5 million, any team can fit him under the cap, and he would be a great middle six option.
Yeah, and if you can scoop a third round pick for Connor Sheary, I mean,
you could get a second round pick for him, no problem. So. Yeah. Why not do it, right? If you're right, I mean, they're going to be on the bubble, so why not just say, hey, you know what, we're gonna give some of the younger guys in the organization a chance to come up and play, right? We're going to maybe call up, I don't even know, like a Ludwig Pearson, bring him up, let him get some ice time, and some of these other younger guys.
And not to mention that Connor Sheary's got those 2 Stanley Cup rings. That's massive. Or right. Does he have 3? Does he have 3? Did he win the cup with? No, he didn't win the cup with Washington.
Just twice with Pittsburgh. Yeah,
he went to Buffalo. That's right. He went to Buffalo before he went to Washington. So he didn't win the cup with Washington in 2018, right? Or was it 28? Yeah, 2018. He won the cup with Pittsburgh in 2018, or in 2017, 15, he 16, won it twice, 16, 17. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, those guys that have Stanley Cups. I mean, those are the guys to go out and deal for, even if they're coming in and playing the every other playoff game. I mean, they know what to do when they get in there. They've been there before. It's not going to scare them. Well, I think we could go through the entire NHL in a show, but we won't. We'll just keep talking as we go along here. I mean, we've got what are we at? It's March 8th is the trade deadline, so we've got just over 2 weeks left for the trade deadline. So we are very much nearing the end, and then we have nothing to talk about for the next 6 months. No. So
nothing.
Yeah, nothing. No playoffs to talk about. Any last thoughts before we sign off here?
No, just another big congrats on the baby news. But that's about it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna go get my other baby up. My 2.5-year-old baby. It's funny, it's just like a dog. Like, at what point do you stop calling your dog a puppy? Right? I mean, they're 2. They're still kind of a puppy, and you can be like, well, yeah, he's 8, but like you're still like, come here, puppy. Like the dog. How long do you call a dog a puppy? I don't know. I've heard 3 years is when they're like, you can't call them a puppy anymore at 3 years.
Okay.
But a child, they're like still your baby, but they're not a baby. Like, she's not a baby. I mean, she can put on her own clothes and go get her own silverware. Like, she's not a baby.
Right.
A baby is practically a little lump that sucks on boobies all day. Like, that's what a baby does. But what were you about to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I just read, was looking at some things, but Luke Shen being held out tonight.
There's been a few guys who've been held out, and we haven't seen him move. So it's
no, we have not.
This is the this is where you treat everybody with the like the glass slipper treatment kind of thing. Oh, I don't want him to break tonight. I feel like there may be a guy, someone, and I've missed it, like someone who somebody wanted to trade and then they got hurt for the rest of the year, and someone went, "Damn it, you idiot! Why were we playing him?" I'm sure that that's happened where you have somebody who you figure we're not going to be that good this year. Towards the trade deadline we'll be dealing this guy, but it's different if it's today and he plays in a game and you would have traded him next week. But like how far out do you hold out a guy? You gotta still play the guy if he's healthy, and you're not just going to scratch him for a month. But
right.
I guess my final note is just wishing the best for Jonathan Taves, that he would heal up from they said he had basically long COVID, and that's what's been like completely just wearing him down all year, and so wish the best of luck for him, that he recovers from that, and we get to see him next year and maybe back with the Blackhawks. Who knows? He's not getting dealt though, so maybe he just goes, signs the extension, and I this is what I wonder. I wonder if Patrick Kane leaves, as I think we all like. Patrick Kane's gonna go, and I don't think that Patrick Kane's. I don't know him. Like, I don't want to make a character judgment based on his personality, because I do not know him. I'm sure that he's a really funny person because of the things that I've seen him do, but and I know that he's not the same guy that beat the tar out of a taxi driver. And I was like, what, 15 years ago now?
She was like 19, yeah.
So I don't want to like, oh, he did that, so that means that he's that guy forever. But I do wonder, I mean, he's obviously the most influential guy in that room at this point, him and Taves. And I wonder if Patrick Kane leaves and you look and you go, I mean, Jonathan Taves is the guy we really want to stay, and a guy that we think that we could build around from a leadership standpoint, not really from an on ice standpoint. He's probably, moving forward, you're looking at someone who is a third line, second line kind of center, and that's how he has been for the last couple of years too. But I think that maybe the Patrick Kane dust settles and you end up keeping Jonathan Taves and he stays with the Blackhawks. He goes through this little bit of a rebuild and the Blackhawks are better for it. He's better for it. And, then maybe he has a little bit of a resurgence, and you just kind of, sometimes you just need a shake up in leadership. And Patrick Kane's been there for so long that you don't even know what the Blackhawks look like without him. So it would be interesting, now that their hand is forced to keep Taves and probably lose Kane, is that you're going to get a look at what maybe this team would look like being led by Kane, or by Taves, sorry. And I'm interested in that. I'm interested to see how the personality works and the leadership works without Kane in the room, because it certainly will change things for the Hawks.
Yeah, those next guys, right? That next group of players coming in, and how much does Jonathan Taves let them, have the room, right?
Right. Yep. It'll be fun to watch. Well, that is our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We'll be back next week to talk more potential trades and break down any trades that happen between now and then. And until then, enjoy these games leading up to the deadline. Justin, I'll talk to you later. To our listeners, have a great night.